Hello and welcome back to the podcast. Today we're joined by a special guest. His name is Dr. Ranj Sagoo, who is a GP and a health and well-being coach. In this enlightening episode, Dr. Ranj delves into the essence of reaching one's full potential and unveils the 6 key pillars of lifestyle medicine. We explore the pivotal role that GPs play in our health and well-being. However, Dr. Ranj does like to embrace a holistic approach to wellness as the first port of call before medication, if possible. You can also expect to learn actionable insights on crafting a healthy morning routine, how to manage negative emotions better, and why it is important to strike a balance in life whilst still enjoying the things that you love. Dr. Ranj sheds light on the detrimental effects of excessive screen time on sleep quality and offers invaluable advice on cultivating gratitude and the habit of reading. Also, Dr. Ranj hosts his own podcast, the Mindful Mix podcast, which really is a treasure trove of health and wellness wisdom that's not to be missed. If you're enjoying the podcast so far, please can you subscribe and leave a 5-star rating? It helps the show so much and gives me all the confidence moving forward to keep improving. Without further ado, let's dive into this conversation. Hello, Dr. Ranj. Thank you very much for being here.
Hi, Yousef. Thank you for inviting me on.
Happy days. Am I saying that right? Now, I've heard a few of your podcasts that you're on, and I know a few people say, is this how you say it? Is that how you say it? And you say, don't call me doctor, just call me Ranj. So am I right in saying Dr. Ranj? Is that right?
Yeah, no, Ranj is absolutely fine. I honestly don't mind. Dr. Ranj is fine. Or I'm quite easy. I'm not picky with what people call
Well, thanks
me.
for being here. There's a question that we always start the podcast with, which kind of just sets the tone. And that is, what does reaching your full potential mean to you?
That's a great question. For me, reaching your full potential means kind of living your life on purpose. And this is something that I talk about quite a lot, is doing everything within your purpose, living to your, like say, full potential. But that means being true to yourself, being true to your values, and being purposeful. And that often takes a lot of kind of self-reflection, knowing what your purpose is. And when you know your purpose, then when you can live by that purpose, then everything is kind of magnified. You're doing things that are so empowering, and that's a key word for me as well, as empowering. So when you're doing things that you're empowering yourself to do, for me, that's living to your full potential.
So I'm a good few episodes in now, and I thought to myself, I'm a bit worried in case everyone answers this question the exact same, and no one's answered the question the same. So far, so good. It obviously means something very different to everyone, which is good. Tell us a little bit about your background before we get into the nitty gritty.
Cool. So I'm, as the name suggests, I'm a doctor. I'm a GP in the NHS. So I've been a doctor now for the past nearly 20 years now. So, and obviously that was starting off in hospitals, and then I became a GP about 12 years ago. I love the transition, and I think that was the right choice for me. For me, it was more about one was kind of the work-life balance, and being able to spend more time with my family, but just also the variety that we see in general practice, and also what's really important to me, we'll probably come on to as a clinician, is connecting with people, and that continuity of care, which sort of in hospital medicine you don't always get. So that was that's me as a clinician. I'm also a health and wellbeing coach. I call it sort of a transformational coach, which is about kind of empowering people to, like we said, sort of living to your fullest potential. So empowering people to become healthy and live their lives to their fullest potential by being healthy. So it's a very holistic sort of healthcare.
In your words, or in your opinion, what is the definition of healthy?
What's the definition of healthy? For me, it's very holistic. health isn't just your physical health, because you can't just have your physical health without having your mental health, without having your social health, without having, all the different sort of aspects of health come together. So they all have to be kind of optimized. So in terms of things like nutrition and being physically active, and even things like sleep, and making sure that we're not doing drugs and alcohol, all of those sorts of things, we have to kind of optimize in order to be healthy.
And for you, have you got some like daily non-negotiables that you start your day with? I know it's becoming a trend at the minute, morning routines, up at 6 in the ice bath. That's not for everyone,
Sure.
but for you, what should everybody's non-negotiables be from the minute they wake up for the first 3 to 4 hours of the day to set themselves up?
I think it's different for everybody. Obviously, everybody. For me, the biggest thing is balance. What works for you in your circumstances is how you have to kind of plan it. So for me, my morning routine is I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'll do sort of my kind of morning like prayers and kind of that meditation type thing, and then I'll do like half an hour's worth of exercise, and then it's time for the kids to get up and get them ready for school and go to work. So that's my morning routine. But for me, that works. I fit that into my morning because it works for me in kind of the scheme of the rest of the day. Now that might not work for everybody, and this is a big part of it, because and this is what I talk about when we talk about being holistic, and it's being holistic and realistic as well. So we have to if we're making these changes and we're trying to be healthy and trying to bring these kind of non-negotiables in, they have to fit within your circumstances. This is why I talk about we have to make sure that we're healthy from all the aspects, because if you start to kind of over prioritize on one, say, for example, like if you're going to say, I have to put in, an hour's worth of exercise every morning, and I have to put in, an hour's worth of meditation in the morning. But if that then starts to compromise like your sleep, you're not getting enough sleep, then that's going to have a knock-on effect.
Do you think, because you're not, are you currently practicing as a GP?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Still to now?
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's a train of thought that many will say, you go into the doctor's office or the doctor's room and you tell them a problem and they say, here's some medication, go away, take this and you'll be fine. And you personally come from the other completely different school of thought, which is the holistic view. What can we be doing with our nutrition, exercise, mental health to keep us balanced? So when somebody comes to see you, do you prescribe that? Like, can you prescribe that? Or is it very much that because you're working for the NHS, it's almost a thing that, right, we're going to give out the medication?
Yeah, there's lots of elements to it. I mean, obviously, the biggest factor in the NHS is as time, which you're probably aware of. You go to the doctors and, you've got a 10 or 15 minute appointment, in which time, you've got a patient who's telling you their problems, you're asking them questions, you're doing an examination. So, time is very precious when you don't have a lot of time to have these kind of very deep discussions, which is why oftentimes you are led into prescribing something for their problems. I do try and use my background in lifestyle medicine and coaching and kind of counselling to try to be kind of more holistic based. And it is difficult, I do overrun, but I purposely do it because that's what I believe in. So it's not to say you can't do it in the NHS. It just takes a lot of time. And you have to find that balance. Yes, where medication is needed, it's needed. I can't neglect the fact that I am a medical doctor, and if a patient, for patients need medication, then I will prescribe medication, but I will always also back that up with, yes, this is a medication that can help your symptoms, but we can also take it back and look at the root cause of what's actually causing your symptoms. What's actually brought you to see us, and what can we change to actually stop this from happening again in the future. Yes, we'll treat the symptoms now, but we can prevent this by making these lifestyle changes.
When it comes to mental health, so for me, for example, when I've struggled with anxiety and a little bit of low mood, and now I'm much better at coping with it. However, when it first comes on and that first wave of anxiety that you've never experienced before hits you, you don't know what's going on. You don't know why this is happening to you. And when you go into the doctors, depending on who you get, they just look at you like they don't understand themselves. It's very much a thing of, if you haven't been through it yourself, sometimes you feel like they don't really get you. And
Sure.
I'm just wondering your thoughts on, if you are struggling with mental health specifically and not physical health, is the GP the right place to go still? Because they are probably just going to give you some antidepressants.
I would say yes, they are still, the person to go. As a general practitioner, we that's what we're there for. We're there to help you with your health, and being a GP means that we are there to, we're like your kind of physician for life, if you like. So we are there to help you with all of your ailments. Yes, we're not specialized in a lot of things, but we are there as pretty much your first point of call for for help. But yes, I mean, in terms of mental health is kind of more of a specialty, but it's kind of a spectrum, isn't it? Like you can go in with kind of sort of a low level stress, or it could be something more complex, whether there is like a personality disorder. So it's a very big spectrum, isn't it, from kind of day-to-day stresses that you're having difficulty deal with to kind of the more complex things. And we might not be the best people to deal with the more complex things, but we are the people who are most likely to be able to help direct you into the right services. Now, that's the other problem with, and again, this is I don't want to really get into a debate about the NHS, but obviously there is a lack of services and resources out there. So people, it is a struggle sometimes to get the help that you need. But I would still say, if you are struggling with your mental health, then, the GP is a very good, source to go to.
Yeah. Well, for me personally, if I was to walk into your room, it'd be a lot different. Obviously, you are clearly, just from reading through some of your qualifications on LinkedIn and stuff like that, you have gone above and beyond in terms of educating yourself around mental health specifically and the more holistic view. But then I also appreciate that a lot of others haven't.
That is the difficulty. At the end, we are general practitioners, so we need to know a bit about everything. And but again, I think that's the beauty of kind of general practice as well, is that we can kind of specialize in things that we're interested in. And obviously but that does obviously create a bit of difficulty for people, because you might not get the same level of support and service in different places. So I do understand kind of that difficulty, but for me personally, mental health is such a big thing, and again, it's something that's really kind of close to my heart, which is why they're conversations that I really like having with patients.
Should we try to be happy? I know there's another train of thought that we shouldn't be trying to chase happiness, because ultimately it will lead us to feeling unhappy.
Okay. The question is, what is happiness? the question is, what is happiness to you? Happiness to all of us is something different. So it's more about, rather than sort of seeking happiness, it's actually what does that mean to you? What's the underlying kind of, again, the values and purpose behind it that's going to make you happy? So whether it's, your happiness is wanting to spend more time with your family, then, what do you have to do to get there? So rather than just trying to seek sort of being happy without knowing what this happiness is, it's quite difficult.
Yeah, I seen something that you posted on LinkedIn that said, replace negative emotions with gratitude. They cannot coexist.
Mm.
Where did that come from? It makes complete sense.
Sure. Okay. I think it's just through reading. Sometimes, obviously, you come through these things and you start to sort of contemplate them, and actually that makes a lot of sense. And also through conversations that I have with patients, some of the journeys that we go through, and we talk about things, you end up on talking about really sort of deep things that then start to change people's perspectives. And I think, and I think as humans, what we do is we're quick to look at sort of the negative side of things. I'll give you an example. There was a patient I was talking to recently who has been trying to lose weight for a very long time. And he goes through these cycles of becoming really motivated about losing weight. He'll go to the gym 4 or 5 times a week, but then he'll constantly check his weight on the scales, and like on a daily basis, and he's not seeing his weight come down, or it's fluctuating, it's up and down. And then he's getting demoralized by it, and he's saying, well, what's the point? And then he'll stop exercising, and he'll kind of constantly go through this cycle. So when we were having this discussion, and I said, well, what was the positives of you going to the gym? What was the positives of you doing all that? And he said, what do you mean? I was like, the only thing you're focusing on is the fact that what you're seeing is you're not losing weight. And I was like, how did it make you feel? How did going to the gym? Well, first of all, from my perspective, I can see somebody who is determined to lose weight, somebody who's had the motivation to want to lose weight. So so you're conscious about your health. You've gone to the effort of making your gym membership, and you've been going 4 or 5 times a week. You've been working out. So those are all, really strong positives to me. And, I can see somebody who, who's putting in so much effort to doing it, but all you're doing is focusing on the negative of what you perceive is not losing weight, so the difference on the scales. So it's that change in the mindset. So when you start focusing more on the positives, then we're not looking at the negative aspect, and some of it comes with a bit of kind of understanding and knowledge as well. So because I was having that discussion, we were talking about it's not good to check your weight on a daily basis. There will be fluctuations. A lot of those daily fluctuations is just carrying water. Some days you're not carrying as much water, some days you're carrying more. And I said also, the other thing we're not realizing is you're going to the gym, you're doing strength workouts, you're changing your body composition. You're replacing the fat with muscle, and muscle weighs more than fat. So what you're seeing on the scales isn't representative of what you're doing. I was like, how did you feel when you were doing this exercise? And then he stopped and thought, and he said, well, actually, I was feeling more like I had more energy. Before I wasn't able to get off the sofa. I used to have to wriggle around and kind of work myself off the sofa, and I felt more, I was able to get up easier. Same from the floor. So I actually did feel a lot better. So when you start changing that thought process and start thinking more along the positive lines, then you're not thinking about the negative aspects of it.
So I think it's important there. The takeaway there was to track from many areas of your life, not just the scale weight. You could be taking photos, you could be, have a list of a few things that's, energy in the morning, energy in the evening,
Absolutely.
hunger, and have all of those on a scale of 1 to 10 maybe, and then track it throughout. So we're not just looking at the number on the scale, which, like you said, can fluctuate so much.
Yeah. It is that it's having that kind of holistic view on it and being self-reflective, so not just looking at the one aspect of it's, being able to look at how is it affecting you emotionally, how is it affecting you, physically, your energy levels, all of those things.
So for you, seeing that you kind of wear a few hats all within health and medicine and stuff like that, but for people that want to learn, how do we learn well? How do we learn faster? How do we retain information?
It's a good question. I think it comes back to, like you were saying, it's, there's so much information out there. It's knowing kind of what the right sources of information are, and being able to go to sort of trusted sources for information. And I think, like we were talking about earlier, is there's so much information out there. It's where do we find these trusted sources that we can go to for information. A lot of it is like from a medical perspective. There's medical journals, but again, you have to know how to read a medical journal to make sure that it's a robust trial, for example. So from that perspective, you're looking at kind of large scale trials that are that have kind of looked at making sure that they've kind of make sure that there's kind of no biases and things in them, or they're kind of meta-analysis where they've put lots of studies together and taken information from. But obviously for people who aren't medical, that might be difficult to do. So it's some of it is if you're looking at sort of other resources, obviously the trusted websites, like obviously first places to start with is like NHS website. There are some good sources of information, kind of broad sources. Like a good one is Patient UK is a good kind of baseline resource for people. With and they're all kind of written by medical professionals.
You said recently that reading used to be a chore for you, but now you've picked it up a lot. And I can relate with that, because reading for me can be a chore. I prefer to learn in other ways, even though I want to read. If that's just not my preferred way of learning, should I just not read and consume it in different ways? Or is there a way that I can turn it from being a chore into, okay, I enjoy it? Because if you've done it, how did you do it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, for me, it was time, and it was not having a lot of time to sort of sit down and devote to reading a book. One is obviously finding what your passion is reading. You're not just going to pick up anything. So it's understanding what you're going to enjoy reading, and that took me a bit of time. Finding out kind of what things I enjoyed reading, but also not putting too much pressure on it. So it was almost like when I was trying to sit down to read something, I was kind of under the feeling I'd have to try and get through as much of it as I could in that kind of one sitting, where there's no time frame on it. You know what I mean? So, setting aside half an hour or an hour if you can to read, and just, reading at your leisure, reading as much as you can, because what you want to do is not just read for the sake of reading. You want to actually learn from what you're reading.
Yeah.
or actually take, something good out of it. Because one of the things I like to read graphic novels, and and that's completely different. But so I'm getting something different from that. I'm able, in that you're able to explore, fantasy worlds and stories and things like that, which is something completely different. So it's what you get out of it. But obviously you don't just have to read as well. There's so many different ways now. Obviously there's audio books and things like that. So it's and I like to do a mixture of all of those. So you don't necessarily just have to read. So mixing, doing a mixture is also good.
I know that you said earlier that you've got 2 kids yourself. When it comes to learning for them in a world where we've got iPads, PlayStations, TikTok,
sure,
everywhere. I mean, you name it, we've got it at our fingertips.
Yeah.
How do you think for kids now, they're, in your opinion, or for me, let me take this to me. I feel like a big reason that I'm a big procrastinator is because of social media. And I feel like if I take my screen time down to a couple of hours a day or an hour and a half a day, and I do that over a prolonged period, I notice my concentration levels go much, much higher. But if I've had 3 or 4 days where I've just been scrolling, even if it is for work or I say it's for work, maybe that's just an excuse.
Sure.
I find that my concentration levels dip. So how do we tackle that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one, and we're all kind of on that journey. Especially, we're learning as we go, because for us when we were growing up, it's we didn't have access to all of this, all of these screens and iPads and things. So we are all still learning. I mean, with my kids, we try and limit their screen time, during the daytime. So obviously after school, it's homework and things have to be done before they're allowed to use their iPads or their phones, and during the week, we say they're not allowed to play on the PlayStation or the Switch, so they know that they've got kind of protected time to play, but also that protected time to work. So and trying to find that balance can be difficult, because you feel it yourself, like you mentioned there. You can spend a lot of time scrolling mindlessly through social media and all of that, and you do feel then afterwards that you're not concentrating on work and things. Me personally, I will, when I'm working, my phone is on silent. It's not even on vibrate, and it's put away so it's out of sight. Because you know what it's like. You start working on something and then your phone vibrates and you're on it again, and before 20 minutes has gone, and before you kind of got back to trying to do your work. So it's trying to create that separation when you're trying to concentrate and do work.
I think it's hard now, isn't it? Because I guess the argument would be for kids, the prize now for winning Fortnite competitions is hundreds of thousands of pounds. I mean, there was a 15-year-old a couple of years ago that was made a millionaire from Fortnite.
Sure.
And you just think like, I hope my kids aren't telling me, well, this is what I want to do, this is my life, but maybe that's just the way we're going, and maybe that's just what we've got to accept, that's becoming a real job.
Yeah. It's difficult, isn't it? It's some of the things that we see now is, we just wouldn't have imagined it in 15, 20 years ago. People making a lifestyle out of being on YouTube and just talking about their own lives and things like that. It was unheard of, wasn't it? We wouldn't have, so it's we have to be aware of the changes in our times, but also again it's that balance between trying to, I think anyway, trying to still instill those values that you have in your children, to make them see, so like you say, that Fortnite kind of millionaire is just that. It's kind of it's a 1 in a million or several million type of chance that that's going to happen. So it's being realistic as well. Say, it's not going to happen to everybody. For most of us, that is a dream, or potentially is a dream, but we have to, be a bit more realistic as well, and put your baseline values in place as well, and say.
You mentioned earlier on that social connections is a huge part, and I think there's some stuff you've spoken about in a previous podcast of your own, which we'll get onto a bit later. Is it the 6 pillars?
Yeah, the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine.
Yes. Do you want to run through what those 6 pillars are and why we should be protecting these pillars?
Sure. Okay. So in lifestyle medicine, it's broken up into 6 pillars, and these are all obviously the important areas of our lives that we should be focusing on. So obviously there's nutrition, physical activity, social connectedness, stress management, kind of risk-taking behavior. So it's sort of whether it's to do with drugs and alcohol and even like physical activity type of risk that we might take, sort of extreme sports and things,
throwing yourself out of the plane
and things like that. Yeah, absolutely. And then sleep. Yeah, so sleep's the last one. So all of those 6 are areas, and I, having kind of studied in lifestyle medicine, I use those 6 pillars as kind of the basis of my sort of coaching program, so that we do spend time looking at each of those areas. Because like I said at the beginning, it has to be a very holistic process. We have to make sure that each of these are optimized and working, in synergy together for us to be, living healthy.
Sleep's a really important one at the minute, isn't it? I think so many people don't understand the importance of getting a good night's sleep. In terms of, we've spoke about morning routine, but how important is a nighttime routine to ensure that we're getting the best quality sleep?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is. I mean, we often see lots of patients who say, they have difficulty getting to sleep, and for numerous reasons. And obviously then you have to look into that. And a lot of the times it is the same things. It's, work stresses, or working till quite late, screens and social media and watching TV and all of those sorts of things are disrupting our sleep patterns. Not giving sleep enough respect, the sort of respect that we should be giving to sleep, because our lives are so busy nowadays that we're constantly trying to eke out that extra hour of work or that extra hour of whatever activity we're doing, and we're sacrificing sleep to do it, thinking actually it'll be all right if I could just get 4 or 5 hours tonight, that'll be fine, I can carry on. But we need to make sure that we are kind of sleeping well. So and then sometimes when we're not sleeping well, we have to look at what's happening that's stopping us from sleeping well. So like you mentioned, sort of the sleep routine at nighttime, so because if we're working till late at night, then that's going to stop you from switching off. You need to have a period of time between work and whatever activities we've been doing to be able to unwind, to subconsciously kind of wind down, so that we're prepared for bed and having a restful sleep.
Are you aware or familiar with the blue light blocking glasses?
Not the glasses specific. Obviously, I know obviously blue light is something that we do talk about, and trying to filter out blue light so that you're, it's not kind of keeping you awake because of the effect it has on cortisol levels. I didn't know specifically about the glasses. I didn't know.
You can get some glasses that you can put on a nighttime in the hours before you go to bed. I'm always skeptical when things come out like this. I don't know how much of an impact they have. Is this just a case of just trial and error? When studies aren't out there, could it be that it works for one person and works for another? Is that called anecdotal? if it's
Yeah,
just on
could
an
be.
individual?
No, I was going to. Yeah, I mean, it's, there's lots of things that are anecdotal that we, I never say. People do ask me questions all the time of, oh, should I take this supplement or should I take that supplement for my joints and this, that, and the other? And I was like, well, if there's no harm in trying it and there's, it's not going to be detrimental to you, then if it works for you, then I don't see why you can't. I can't see any evidence to say that yes, it does work or it doesn't work. So there's no harm in trying it. I think. Sorry, I was going to say kind of a bigger question to me on using something like that, saying, blue light filter glasses it comes back down to the root of it, doesn't it? Why do you need to be using blue light filter glasses at nighttime to look at a screen before going to bed when, maybe you should be cutting out that screen time completely before you go to bed?
I guess it's that thing of, well, first question is, how long before we go to sleep should we be winding down and finishing screen time?
Sure. Okay. So screen time, kind of the evidence or kind of says about kind of an hour to 2 hours before you go to bed. Definitely within an hour before going to bed, we shouldn't be having any screen time.
I say that because for people that work, which is the majority of people, we might go to work, our partner goes to work, and then we come in and we have dinner and we have the social connection and we chat, and then we do a bit of tidying up and it gets to 8 o'clock and bedtime is 10. Now, for a lot of families, me included, we like to get on the sofa and binge watch a bit of Netflix. Yeah. Where are we supposed to find the time to do that if we're supposed to be winding down for bed, when that's kind of the time that we get to spend together? Because like you said, with the 6 pillars, it's very hard to get them all optimal. But I think maybe what you're saying is if we're going to be sacrificing one of the pillars, maybe sleep should definitely not be the one that we're sacrificing.
Sure. Okay. I mean, it is, like you say, it is a bit of trial and error, because what you should just describe there is pretty much what I do as well, and me and my wife as well, in terms of you've all been at work, you come home, you have you prepare dinner, you have dinner with the children, they're doing homework, you're doing a bit of work, and come to 8 o'clock ish, you want to sit down and watch a bit of TV, because again, that's a bit of social connection. You need that time with your partner. So it all has to be a bit of balance. And if, watching that 1 hour of TV together and having a conversation together during that time is beneficial for you, and it's building that connection for you, and it's not disrupting your sleep routine, because it might not disrupt your sleep routine. It might not stop you going to sleep. Then it's creating that balance, isn't it? And also it's if it's making you kind of feel happier and more fulfilled that you've spent time with your partner and had an engaging conversation whilst watching some TV, then ultimately you should be more relaxed anyway for when you do go to bed, and your stress levels should hopefully have come down.
The last thing I want to touch on sleep is, how do we know if we've had a good sleep? I know you can get these wearables and trackers. They are very expensive, and I feel like are more targeted towards elite athletes that are really wanting to optimize every single last piece of their being. But for the average Joe out there that just wants to optimize, how do they know that they're getting good and sufficient sleep?
There is a danger, isn't it, that there's so much information, like you say, so much information out there, and then there's so many kind of resources to track different things that we can get so caught up in it. But at the end of the day, what is good sleep? what we're talking about is restful, restorative sleep. So it's actually just being mindful, looking back at in the morning or in the day, thinking, how do I feel in the morning? Do I feel refreshed? Or do I feel like I've had such a restless night that I'm exhausted and I could just go back to bed again. So it can be something as simple as that, and thinking about the rest of your day at the end of the day, thinking, actually, you know what? Did I have enough energy to do everything I needed to do? Do I still feel energetic now? So putting too much emphasis on, tracking kind of all of these kind of little bits is sometimes too much. And it's just a bit about kind of being sort of kind of inwardly reflective and thinking about, how am I feeling really? Did I have that restful sleep? Do I feel like I've got enough energy to get on with the day? Do I feel happy? Happiness, like we were talking about earlier, do I feel that actually I've got the energy, I've got the motivation, and I'm happy in my daily activities?
Yeah. Is it a good idea for most people to get a yearly blood test or something like that to check their biomarkers? Because something that I've started doing is using like the private ones that come to your door, and it gives you 56 biomarkers.
Yeah.
And I was actually surprised to know that I'm deficient in vitamin D, which I know a lot of people in the UK are, but it then lets me know that, okay, I should probably supplement this. Also, I have slightly high cholesterol. There's a few things that, if you go to the doctors and just go get a blood test, they're not checking for all those different biomarkers. They may be just checking for a certain few.
Sure.
So do you think it's a good idea for people, if they do feel tired or if they do feel not their best, is it worth going and getting a blood test to see if you're deficient in anything that you need to supplement maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I think it helps if we're going to use it as a kind of a baseline, as a resource to work from, then I think absolutely. And that scenario you described of kind of tiredness is a very common scenario we see, in general practice, and it often helps to have that baseline, and we do in general practice, a screen for tiredness, which will include, a lot of these different biomarkers, probably not as many as you would get if you have this private test. But we will look at several vitamin levels and things, and cholesterol and things like that. And I think you're right. It's information that, if you use kind of positively, can empower you. And I think that's the important thing, is being able to empower yourself to make change. And if you've got this baseline, so if you know that your vitamin D levels are low, and if you know that your cholesterol is high, then we can understand how to either supplement them, how to bring your cholesterol down, and then start to think, if it helps you be more reflective and be mindful of, what you're eating and, what activities you're doing, and how, maybe you do need to spend more time out in the sunlight rather than, sitting in your office and things like that, then it's empowering, to have that information.
Yeah. And I think it's balance as well, isn't it? I mean,
yeah, of course.
Going back to the pillars, there's nothing wrong with going out on a Saturday and, treating yourself to a drink or two and a big curry or a big fast food takeaway. But as long as that's not making up the majority of your diet, would you say that that's also the school of thought that you come from, that, you've got to enjoy yourself. You've
Absolutely.
got to have these social occasions. It's not all just about optimizing your health. Otherwise, you're going to sacrifice so many of the other key pillars.
Absolutely. Yeah. Balance is the most important thing. And along with that is, and actually I was talking about this yesterday with a friend of mine. We were talking about being kind and compassionate with yourself. we're so easy, or it's so easy for us to do that for other people. Like, for example, if somebody came to you and said, "Oh, I'm trying to be really healthy. I was doing really well, and then I kind of slipped up and I went out for a big curry and I had a kebab or whatever." And we'll be the first people to say to them, don't worry about it. You've been so well for the last 2 or 3 weeks. Having that one kebab doesn't derail you or anything. But we don't do that for ourselves. And we're very quick to pick up on the negative, like we said earlier, and turn that into such a big thing and not look at the bigger picture and not being kind on ourselves. And I say this to patients all the time. I was like, if you step back and look at the last 2 weeks, and you've been really healthy with your meals, you've been really, really conscious about what you're eating, then you're allowed to have that one snack. You're allowed to have that one meal that you enjoy. That's the important thing about it. We're not robots. We can't suddenly change. You can't switch it off, can you? If you enjoy eating sweet treats, or if you enjoy kebabs or whatever, there's no reason you can't fit that into a healthy lifestyle. Because it's about, if you're making these changes, they have to be realistic changes. If you're somebody that does enjoy these things, if you start to deny yourself these things, then it's going to make you sort of frustrated. It's going to make you angry, and you're kind of going to get into this pattern where at some point you're going to fail, and you're going to go back to doing it again, and probably doing it worse than you were before.
I want to give you a few minutes now to let people know about your own podcast as well. I know that you're a few episodes in. You do it with a co-host, but let people know what it's all about, who it's for, and why they should listen.
Oh, thank you. So me and a friend of mine called Jackie Cheed, he's actually a UK Bhangra singer, so Punjabi singer, and we met at university, so we've known each other now for just probably over 20 years, and we've always had this really, really good connection. We've always been able to have kind of open conversations. I don't know whether you've had this relationship with somebody where you've just kind of got on with them and you can almost say anything and talk quite openly. And it's so the podcast kind of grew out of so the podcast is called the Mindful Mixtape Podcast. So it was that play on it being about mindfulness and health and well-being, but also kind of bringing in some of his kind of creativity with music and things like that. Because again, creativity is a big part of health and well-being. So using our kind of the creative side of us. And I don't know whether you do anything like that, because for me, art is a big part of my well-being. It's some I don't know whether you know, but I'm also kind of a part-time artist where I find a bit of time to do some art. But again, for me, that's relaxing. It's my way of kind of switching off and winding down. But anyway, so coming back to the podcast, we wanted it to be about health and well-being, but in a way of telling people that we're having these conversations, about health, things that might be on your mind. We're having these conversations, and it's okay to have these conversations. So we can talk about, like actually just yesterday we were recording about nutrition, but it came on to things like body image and difficulties, we've had with our own perception of body image and things. And these are the kinds of things that people are either thinking about or having conversations maybe behind closed doors that should, it's okay to have these open conversations.
We're actually on track for men to... there's a study being done on men and how they perceive their own body image. And we're actually on track to overtake women and how they perceive their body image. And you would think that it's majority women that are comparing themselves to other women on social media. I should look like this. This is the epitome of healthy. I should have abs. I should do. Whereas now we're actually seeing the trend change to men overtaking women in that aspect.
Yeah. It's not surprising because, this is exactly what we were talking about yesterday, and that's the kind of journey that I went through myself personally. From a very young age of, when I was kind of at primary school age, I was quite overweight, and then along with that came the bullying and the teasing and things. But then that obviously influenced my beliefs about kind of body image and what I should look like. And then going from one extreme to the other of trying to become skinny, if you like, and then trying to maintain that by, doing things like missing meals and things like that to try and maintain this image of being skinny. And it was only, and then it would kind of yo-yo because you'd get to a point of where, you're, you're doing kind of quite an extreme diet, which doesn't last for very long. And then you go the other way and then you kind of binge eat and things like that. And then I think it was only a point where I come to a realization of actually, why am I doing this? What person do I want to look at in the mirror that I'm going to be happy with? So what image do I want to see that I am going to be happy with? Not what I perceive other people want me to be happy with, but what am I going to be happy with? And then, when I started to think about that, that's when I started to realize, actually, this is how I want to be. And this is how nutrition and, healthy physical activity looks like for me.
Yeah, I think when you allow yourself to be vulnerable and honest, especially online, if you've got a podcast or you've got social media or something like that, especially if you have a business as well, I think people are going to relate way more to that than if you are a personal trainer and all you're doing is posting pictures of yourself with, chiseled abs and huge shoulders and massive arms. Because yes, that's you, but the people that you're helping aren't that. And the people that you're helping can't relate to that. They want to see, a bit more of the real side, and they want to know that when they're on the phone to you, you can pick up the phone and they understand you. So a little like for you, you're saying you've been on that journey. I think that's going to be a real relatable factor when people are speaking to you because you've been through it yourself.
And I think that was, again, the point of the podcast is that, even though I'm a doctor, we've all been on certain journeys in our lives, in terms of nutrition and sort of, your relationship with food or physical activity or whatever. We've all been through these, and we're still going through these journeys. And that's what we wanted it to be. We wanted it to show, and we wanted to show that, we don't all have all the answers, and we're all trying to find our way. And it's only through having these conversations that we can either, change perspectives, see a different viewpoint, something that might help us think, actually, that might be something worth exploring. Or I never looked at it like that. Maybe that's a good way of looking at it.
Well, I think we've covered a lot in that hour. I think there's a lot of value that people can take away from it, a few tips, a few tricks. But ultimately, I think with podcasts like this, you can listen to it and it comes back to the learning thing. You can listen to it and not do anything about it if you are struggling with one of these things, or you can take action and actually utilize some of the things. And I mean, I'm not perfect at that. There's so many things I know I should be doing, but I don't do. But if anyone is struggling with anything, I think, it's just important to highlight that there is things out there that you can do. There are people you can talk to. So I just want to thank you for coming on and covering a few of those points for us. And also just let people know where they can find you, remind them of the podcast if they want to check it out. But yeah, let them know where they can find you on social media.
Brilliant. No, thank you, Yousef. It's been really nice having a chat with you. And yeah, it's like we said, it's about having these conversations. So if anybody is, struggling out there, then I always say is, it's worth just picking up the phone to somebody and, and having a conversation, because most people, are there for you, even if you think they're not. Most people are willing to listen, friends, family, first point the call with the doctor, we are there to help and support. Myself personally, obviously the Mindful Mixtape podcast is on Apple, it's on Spotify, Google, and Amazon as well. We should be coming up onto YouTube very soon, but we're not quite there yet. So that's the podcast. For myself, from the coaching perspective, so health and wellbeing coaching, and kind of mental health coaching as well. I've got a website. It's drranjsagoo.com. Nice and easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll link all of those in the show notes as well. Thank you very much, and let's keep in touch.
Brilliant. No, thank you very much.